So I've heard in one of your other podcast recordings where you said that you're looking 2 years into the future and trying to bring it to today, right? So is there any like this is something very similar to what I think you just said, right? But is there anything at this moment in your mind that kind of is lacking from something you could get off the market and you're currently building in-house?
Oh, yeah, that's a very, very good question. Also, that's a really, really good one. It's getting into some. Okay, let me think about it. So, I like the advances in the large language model space. I like the moves that is happening industry wide. And from personally, I listen to Bloomberg a lot. And last week, Bloomberg News for more than 1 hour every day was, I think, for about 3 days, they were talking about large language models, ChatGPT, AI, and that means this thing is getting mainstream. But when I look at companies and I think about cloud providers, lots of cloud providers say, "Oh, we boast of hosting 7,000 data lakes for the entire company, or 80% of the data." Example, AWS, we host 80% of the data lakes on AWS or S3. But then businesses, if I think about businesses right now, they don't acquire all this data because they want to acquire it. They acquire it because they want to leverage the data to stand out from their competition or even improve the customer experiences. And so what I'm expecting, I'm looking out for in my mind in the next 2 years or 3 years is that I have a data lake. I have limited set of employees that can work on this data lake. And I have dark data. And by statistics, right, there's 80% of the data lake is not used. So give me a solution that looks at the relationships in my data and tells me something new that I don't know based on the business constraints. If it can clean the data, definitely, right? But I think most people try to put a bit of structure in their data lake. So I think maybe about 5 years ago, we used to have data oceans and all these things, but now people have some curation and cataloging around the data lake. And at least for us, we have a certain naming convention that is standard across the company. So look at the set of tables that I have in my data lake, or a set of logical representations that I have in my data lake, and then tell me what I don't know. And if you want to put that in context, I also have a lot of unstructured information in knowledge repositories. I don't need to ask it the questions. If I don't even want to think about the questions every day, have your cloud service, run through my knowledge repository and tell us something new based on industry trends that we don't know about.
I think doable. The question is whether, like something I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things that I am not aware of. The question is, what is relevant? I don't know. So I would add this additional and why it's important, right?
So people are kind of already experimenting with ChatGPT and basically just large language models, like inputting the entire knowledge base around your schemas and relations. Probably very soon descriptions of the columns will also come in, right? So maybe these large language models can already kind of give you some hints around what you should be looking at just by knowing your wider knowledge base.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that is the adoption in the enterprise, right? Because that's a lot different from personal usage of large language models and using ChatGPT. It's how does it comply with regulations? Especially for us, we work in the EU. How does this comply? How do we make sure that there's data privacy? But I give you a typical example. So internally, lots of companies have domain knowledge that is really huge, and then they have industry knowledge that is outside. If a customer, or let's say a cloud provider, comes to me and says, we can ensure privacy, HIPAA, GDPR, whatever compliance, and then says, we compare that with industry trends on a weekly basis, and we come up with strategies for you to pivot or to adjust your offering that would really shape the market. This I don't have to think about. This is now then AI supporting strategy, supporting product, to really think about how best to serve the customer. So there is enterprise knowledge, there's outside industry knowledge, putting that together, and the language model is really coming up with maybe a weekly summary of how to think about how the industry is going based on the internal knowledge that we have. This is something I would pay for.
But don't you think that if this happens, then kind of all of the companies in the same field converge to the same point? Because of course that's a perfect market, right? Where everyone kind of perfectly produces a product that customers want. So to me, it sounds like this is just the road to it.
It could be, but you have to also have to look at it from how fast can companies execute. And definitely might lead to a winner take all if the companies that execute faster. But to be honest, we all have this on a daily basis. Yeah, but you're right. It might lead to a perfect market, but
It resonates. What you already said is resonates with what I heard from Wojtek Zaremba, one of the founders of OpenAI. He visited Warsaw 2 weeks ago, and we met at like he had a round table at university, and he was asked like, definitely he can be called a super successful person from many dimensions, and he was asked by one of the professors, what are the roots, the key things that help him from a perspective be successful. And the one maybe he said something on top of that, but the one I remember, he said that when think independently, don't be afraid to think in a different way than others, because usually when everybody tells you that this is a good idea, it's already too late. So
Buy Bitcoin today, right?
yeah, like so you would need to have but maybe if you have like your own data that are proprietary, it is the challenge right now. The prompts are too short to encapsulate the whole data you have. So if you can have a kind of fine-tuned version of such a model, maybe, but I still believe that it will help us converge to the same set of ideas sooner. But
definitely. But if you look at it, right, we all converge onto almost the same set of ideas.
it's true. We are just slower than we will be, right?
Exactly.
it's getting just, yeah.
So if you look at the LLM right now, everybody's releasing 70 billion tokens. It's the same idea about really generating knowledge, generating text, or summarizing, but maybe an improved version of it. Look at the cloud providers, or let's say cloud compute providers, right? Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, Alibaba, they are all providing the same, but they're differentiating in certain things. So eventually we are all converging on the same thing.
Yeah, we want to make it easy for people to migrate. So everybody is making the API in kind of similar way, right? To allow the migration, and API dictates also data model of the product. So yeah, it converges. I agree.